This is the XrmToolCast from Xrm Audio with Business Applications MVPs Daryl and Jonas Rapp. The podcast focused on tools available for the Microsoft Business Application Platform. This episode is brought to you by Mapltyics by Inogic. Mapltyics by Inogic is a market-leading certified for Microsoft Dynamics 365 geoanalytical mapping app. Mapltyics empowers users with powerful map visualizations and routing capabilities within Dynamics CRM to drive better sales, improve business processes, and engage the right customers at the right time. Mapltyics now works with Dynamics 365 version 9 and Dynamics 365 app for mobile and tablet. We thank Mapltyics by Inogic for sponsoring an XrmToolCast from Xrm Audio.
Hi, and welcome to episode 5 of the XrmToolCast. And this is a very special episode since Daryl has now switched seat from the host to the guest seat. So, Daryl, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me on, Jonas. This is a wonderful green room we have here at the XrmToolCast, I have to say.
It is, indeed.
Yes.
Yeah. So, what you been up to lately? Anything fun happened?
Anything fun happened? I just left my previous employer as of last week, and have started a new company. So that's one big thing that's it's fun and exciting. So I'm going out on my own.
Giant leap for a man, but
giant leap, yes. And it's one not to be made without accountants. The more and more that I dive into it and realize it's like, yikes, there's a lot of stuff I'd have to figure out. So anyway, yep. So that's a big job changes happened this week. So yeah.
All right. So, but that's not what we're here to talk about.
No, that is not what we're here to talk about.
No, you've been doing other stuff as well. I recently saw a tweet somewhere that you released a new tool for the XrmToolBox.
Yes.
It's called, I guess, the Visual Studio Solution Accelerator, and it makes me feel like, okay, my Visual Studio is slow. I should add this to make it faster. Or what's the purpose of this? What problem does it solve?
So the reason that I created this tool was I needed to be able to, or I have all these toolings. I have these base classes, these helper methods, all this stuff that is very, very helpful, but it's not easy to set up. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense for someone that's brand new to come in and say, oh, I need this. Oh, no, I need that. Oh, no, I need this. No, I need that. When they just want to start writing their plugin.
Yeah,
right?
I totally recognize that.
And lack of documentation makes it even worse. With I give a brief explanation, but even myself, it would take me about an hour to set up a new solution for a client and have a plugin ready to go. It includes building the early bound entities. It includes bringing in all my sources from GitHub. That includes setting up shared projects so I didn't have to IO merge code. Like all this stuff, and this includes setting up unit testing. All this stuff I had to set up. Took me an hour or a little bit more even to set up, because I always set it up with the naming of the client that I'm working at, and it just it was a very painful part. And so when I want to teach those things to people, when I can't give them, okay, here's an hour and a half instructions of how you go through and set this up. Because no one's going to do that.
No. And again, you have to do it over and over again for each new developer, and we don't like doing things more than once, right?
Yeah, if I do something twice, it's once too many. So,
So it will solve the problem of manually having to, even if you have all these sort of accelerators already to help you with the development, it will solve the problem of setting it up manually to be able to get to that accelerated state of your solution, right?
Correct. So it's designed specifically for brand new project day one. Go ahead and get started here. The one thing that I will add that is different about it is that it can also do. It's designed to be a wizard in that you can also add it to an existing solution as well. So if you've already got a solution with some plugins in it, and you want to bring in, and then maybe you're creating a new plugin, and you want to utilize these new libraries in the new plugin, you can go ahead and run the tool, add everything to your solution, bring in all the NuGet packages, and
that's awesome.
Boom, and
there are so many cases when you want to try something new, but you're required to have a greenfield scenario, and you always have this old baggage you're carrying around. So that's great. So, but what does it actually do? I actually downloaded it recently and looked at it. There were like 3 options to do this, do that, and then finally do something else. So what are the steps it does?
So the first step, if you look at the options, the first option is to go ahead and install the accelerator projects into your solution. Okay, so these are going to be the shared plugin base classes that I recommend that you create, because if I back up a little bit farther, you don't want to be having a GitHub project that is your base class that you put all your code in. That's somebody else's project, because sooner or later you're going to want to make a change in that, and now you've changed the code, and so if you change the code, then you can't. Then how can you upgrade it and that kind of stuff? So you want to have a layer of abstraction between what anybody's stuff is, but my stuff, as I'm talking about in particular here, you want to have a layer of abstraction between that plugin base class and your plugin base class at the client. Because you're always going to run into some weird situation of, they're on-prem and they've got some custom logging database that they want to use instead of the .NET, instead of the CRM logging database logging functionality. Maybe they want to do that, or maybe this is a online customer and they want to be able to have logging that automatically sends it out to what was the thing Jason used last week? What's the Azure logging service?
Yeah, the App Insights.
App Insights. There we go. Yeah, maybe you want to do that. So that's stuff that belongs in your particular client's layer of logic. But that doesn't belong in the actual base core stuff, because then you add all these dependencies that you don't want or you don't need.
Yeah. So you disconnect the framework at a certain level from what you consider to be core that you have supplied them with, and where you're actually able to customize it for your own company or your own tailored needs.
That's exactly right. It's exactly right, because you want to have that layer in there where you can put whatever you want's custom in there, and if I ever update my stuff, I don't want to break you.
Oh,
and so that's the whole point of having that extra stuff there. And it's really hard to explain that to somebody brand new, to say, all right, now you need to create this project and do it this way. And there's all these questions. Not only are there questions of what do I do, but why as well. So if I can eliminate the what do I do, then there's only the why to answer, and that makes it a little simpler. So,
when you install this base accelerator project, do you get sort of sample snippets and to see how you're using all these?
So it's a whole walkthrough wizard, all right? So first it says, okay, what solution do you want to create a solution? Do you want to use an existing solution? So you select that solution. And then based on that solution, it's going to guess at what your base namespace really is. So, for example, I have an example project, and the base namespace is xyz.xrm. So the company xyz.xrm. That's my namespace. And everything's going to live in that namespace, basically. I mean, there may be sub namespaces, but that's going to be the root one, right? So you define that. And then you walk through the rest of the process and you find what the names of your projects are that you're going to use. And if you want to include early binding, and one of the options is if you want to include the example plugin projects, okay? Because I have my own special plugin base code that I like to use, and it's very similar to, it has a lot of stuff into it, but one of the things that's similar to Scott Giroux's Sparkle framework is the ability to define when your plugin should fire. Should it fire on this message, for this entity, for this stage, all that kind of fun stuff. Now, it doesn't use that to go and wire up the registrations for you, although I theoretically could write a tool to do that at some point in the future. But primarily it's serving two purposes. One, that you don't have to ever write any code that checks for some weird state that you shouldn't be in. I hate it when I see code on all these plugins that are checking to see, am I running in delete? Well, exit. Well, why are you checking for this? Would just declare that you don't run in that. You're better off doing it that way. So
I have to confess, I've written so many if return statements like that in my time.
Yep. And it's because it's easy to do. It's not really that painful, and you can go to sleep at night, right? And I mean, it's not gonna kill anything, but it's just why start in that path? Why start in that level? Why not just give it a little bit extra to start in the next level? And then as well, for new developers that are coming in, or maybe you coming in 3 months later and looking at your plugin, or 2 weeks later, this is when this plugin is supposed to execute, and these are the events that it's supposed to handle. You can just know that because it's declaring that rather than having to read a whole bunch of source code. So
and I have to say also, I mean, one of these checks at some points they sort of work against you. I know I had a plugin firing on pre-operation, and I realized, okay, I really have to do this pre-validation. So I just changed the step registration, But then nothing happened, of course, since I was also checking the stage there. So you had to rewrite and recompile and update the whole environment. So I like that approach. Okay, so you get some samples in there as well, and you sort of pick and choose what you want, what flavors or what parts of your framework you want. Then what?
So there's one minor thing. If you do choose early binding, it's going to configure an early bound config file for you, and then you just open up the early bound generator and open up that settings file and run, and it generates your early bound entities for you in the correct folder and the correct namespace, and you can check that all into TFS at one shot or GitHub, whatever you're using, and it will go ahead and use those settings, and everyone in your project can use those settings, and you don't have to worry about different people having different generations.
Just out of curiosity, I mean, when you're checking, finding the namespace and so on, and I don't know if you are looking at what entities do we need to create early bound for as well. How do you look in the existing code? Is it reflection or just file parsing?
So this is designed for brand new stuff. It's not going to look at a plugin that already exists, right? And so I only bring in the actual early bound entities that are required for the sample projects by default. Okay. And then you can go in. So it just creates that settings XML file for the early bound generator, and you go in and edit it to your heart's delight.
So it's basically to get started, and then you continue from there.
Correct. Yep. All right. Because even that's kind of confusing. But once you've got that whole thing set up, then you've run it, you've generated the early bounds, open up your solution. If you've included everything, you'll have unit tests already configured, already set up to run. You can just go and build. It will already have downloaded the appropriate NuGet packages already, and you can just go in, open it up, build, open unit test, and run all. And they should have, I think it's 11 or 12 unit tests that are successful just off the bat without you having to do anything. So it gives you examples of how to do that, how to kind of get started. So it's just some short examples, and I can add more in the future as I see people that are asking questions or struggling with things. But so that's the first option, is to just get all that core stuff in your solution. Second option is just to add another plugin or add another workflow. So I've added all these base projects and stuff. Now I need to add the workflow, and so it's going to say, okay, what solution or what names you want to give it, and it's going to go through and find the particular base classes that I've created, and it's going to go try to find those files and figure out what project it is, because you could have renamed it if you wanted to something else that you'd rather do. But it's going to try to wire those up just based on what you selected. So that's the second option. And then the third option is an option to install some snippets. So in the first option, you also have the option to install snippets, but I realized that you're the first person that goes through and sets up the solution. They may check that, but then you may have somebody else come in later and they need to install the snippets, and so they may want to be able to just go in and install the snippets. And there's just 4 really, really simple Visual Studio snippets that get installed. Okay, the first one isn't related to CRM at all. It's just regions. There's already a region by default in Visual Studio, but I'm kind of OCD. The one by default doesn't include naming what the region is at the end of the region.
Yeah, I know that. Okay,
so this one just gives you a default. Whatever you type in at the beginning of the region, it types in at the end of the region. That way, if you're looking up, this is that region above, that you could. It just I love it, but anyway, I'm throwing it in there because I'm assuming everyone else is like me, but who knows? Then there's a snippet to create a new plugin. There's a snippet to create a new plugin unit test framework for that plugin, and then for the actual test itself, there's another snippet for that. So it's just four little snippets. That's it.
Okay, nice. So speaking of regions, you're not using CodeMade or anything like that to organize your code, including the regions and so on.
CodeMate.
CodeMade, like
CodeMade. Is that a Visual Studio tooling or extension or something?
Some extension there.
No, I've never actually used CodeMade. What's CodeMade?
You should check it out. I guess it's like ReSharper and so on, but it's free and does a lot of that at least. Okay. So I realize, when you're doing the early bound stuff, you need a connection to CRM. But does this tool actually need a connection to CRM?
No, it does not connect to CRM. And currently, in the current tool, you'll notice that the icon spinner spins the whole time.
Yeah, that's why.
That is a bug because I have declared that it doesn't actually connect to CRM. There's a bug in the XrmToolBox that Tanguy said will get fixed in the next release that shows that spinner icon. So,
okay, got it.
So
I was wondering
that's
about
why
that
you
when
see
I was
that.
testing here. Okay.
Yep.
So
that's not me. That's Tanguy. I'll blame him. Tanguy, fix your stuff.
Yes, absolutely. So, I mean, of course, this is, I know you created the framework behind that, the accelerators itself that it's using. There are a lot of others. Why should you use this one? This is your primary plug-in time here. So why should you use this instead of the other options out there?
Why is mine amazing and everyone should use it? That's the question, really.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, because it was created by me, of course.
There you go. Nobody do you see any advantages that you have, or is there even anything similar to this out there?
I would say there are maybe some similar pieces, but it's primarily just my total way that I set up my own projects on all my own clients for the last 5 years. This is how I've done it. And so I'm just taking that experience and trying to spread it to whoever is willing to learn. Are there other things out there? Yes. Do I know about them very much? No. So it's kind of hard to compare some things. I did take a look at Scott Durow's Sparkle framework I mentioned before, and the main thing that I looked in there is how he sets up how these assemblies should be registered. And his methodology for doing that are to add attributes to your class, to your plugin. And that's really kind of ugly when you look at it in code. Like, there's all these attributes, and he's
visually ugly.
Yes, visually ugly. There's like 30 of them there. And so I kind of go a little bit farther and say, no, I don't really want to do that. I want to be able to just define only what I want to define. And I want to define it in a much cleaner way. Now, he's got tools that automatically define that for you based on how you've registered it. But I don't like having to put that little step in the developer's hitch of, okay, go and register. Okay, now that you've registered, go and run the tool to go and grab it. I'd just rather the developer do it themselves. So I'm a big fan of fluent methods. You'll see fluent methods throughout all my stuff, and that's exactly how I show setting up those connections is the fluent method of, say, all right, for these entities, for this message, with this custom action, call this message, and yeah, you're done. So that's one advantage with that.
So the first argument is that yours look good and Scott Duro is ugly.
It's prettier in Scott Duro's. Yes, that's that one. The funny part with early bound entities is I don't use the link to CRM provider. Mm-hmm. Mostly because I've ran into a couple issues with it where it works just fine in one environment but is failing in another environment, and I'm not sure why, but if I change it to the equivalent query expression, it works just fine. So I've ran into that every now and then. The major issue, though, is the power of link is that you don't have to learn something else. If you know link, you can use it. Except that for the link to CRM provider, there is a whole bunch of gotchas. Things that will compile just fine but won't work.
Okay, so they follow the link standard, but it doesn't really execute.
Yeah, you can have the link syntax, but you don't know, I've got to have everything that's a constant, and my comparison has to be on the right-hand side of my equals equation. I can't put it in the left-hand. Like, there's all these little tidbits that I'm like, it's just easier to just go through and do query expressions, or in my mind. And unless it's something extremely complicated and you want to use something like the fetch XML builder to do that, sure, go ahead. But in my mind, it's a lot easier to use query expressions, and I add a lot of helpful extensions to the query expressions to make them way less verbose. Like, for example,
I'm waiting still for a pull request for fetch XML builder, which generates your style of code for query expressions.
I should do that. Shouldn't I? Should do that. Yeah. You have to teach me how to write your little plugin for that then, and I'll have to go through and do that.
Yeah. So I'm guessing also, I mean, this the area that the void that this fills is adjacent at least to developer toolkits for Visual Studio. Would you say what parts do you have here that isn't there, and vice versa?
Okay. So one of the reasons I'll go back up. I originally started to think of making project templates for Visual Studio instead of making this tool. That was my initial foray into this. One problem is I've never made a project template thing in Visual Studio. The second problem is it still requires somebody to know the logic of how do you set up the shared project, how do you set up the other you can't just create a single project and you're done. It requires having a couple other projects that are referenced correctly in order to remove the requirement to do aisle merging.
Yeah. So you need something to actually do the fiddling in the solution.
Yes. So I'd have to do an actual Visual Studio extension, which not everyone loves installing extensions. They get out of date. You get a new version of Visual Studio, you can't use it, and just like, eh. So, and it's not as easy to find those extensions in the Visual Studio extension library. But if you put it in the XrmToolBox, at least my thinking is, then there's a whole array of people that immediately are seeing that and choosing to spend some time to look at it, hopefully, and just decide if it's what they like or what they don't like. So.
Yeah, all right. So there's one question that was almost supposed to be the first question I asked you about this. We all know the tools in XrmToolBox have these nice TLAs. And this looks like an FLA. So what's the acronym
I thought about
for
that.
the Visual Studio Solution Accelerator?
Well,
VISA.
Yeah, VISA. Right now I'm going with VSSA. Naming things is hard. That's always a problem. What do you call this thing? I originally just thought, Solution Accelerator, but I didn't want it to get confused with a CRM solution. So then I got to prefix it with Visual Studio in front of that. So Visual Studio Solution Accelerator. So right now it's going to be a 4-letter acronym rather than a 3-letter acronym. So I thought about it and I questioned myself and I said, I think I'm just going to do it like this because it makes most sense to me. But do you think I'm wrong? Should I come up with a better one?
No, I think this is good, and it says what it is.
Yeah.
So we all know, as I asked you earlier today, at least I tend to release things when they are not quite version 1.0. And we all know it will evolve after this. What do you see coming for next release? What are you working on or thinking about to do next?
This was primarily for me the part that I didn't go through and iron out all the details was the testing of things. So I'm sure there's going to be some issue where if you change this name, the functionality that I used to go find it and replace it isn't going to work. I'm sure there's some potential projects out there, or solutions out there that have some sort of structure that isn't expected that's going to fail. Like those are my expectations of things that this isn't going to work at some point in the future. I'm going to need to look at that in the near future. So that's my major first concern. Aside from that, this was. You kind of have to get it all working correctly. And so it wasn't like there's a whole lot of extra features to add. What I probably will spend more time adding is just documentation. That's probably the big thing to go through. Because even right now, it just has 3 options, and you really have no idea what to do. So like, I need to put in, you select the first option, I just fill out the text box and say, it'll do this, or it'll do that. You can go through and get an idea of what the heck is this thing supposed to do or how is it going to work. I need to create a video on it and kind of walk through that process, all that kind of fun stuff. I've even thought of taking the whole wizard functionality thing and extracting that out into something that we could reuse in other projects if you ever needed to do that sort of thing. So
okay, so you mean the whole UI layout of the wizardy?
Yeah, because the other part that I really would love to be able to do is love to make it more plug and playable where you can create your own sort of templates for it.
Yeah.
So the wizard functionality all it ends up generating is an array of objects. That's it. And so it's either going to be strings, or if there's multiple questions, it's going to be a list of strings. Like that's the information that you get. And then I take that and convert that into my particular processor for going through and processing those things to add it to the solution.
So it should be possible to take that list of strings or whatever and store it as this is my base configuration when I set up my new solution, so I can use that next time as well.
Yes, that's the idea for that, and that's if you actually download the source code and you attach a debugger, you'll see a couple extra options just pop up on the drop-down. Because I need to be able to test these things, and I didn't want to spend 3 minutes going through a wizard to configure everything. I just wanted to say, use the default settings. And so, you'll actually see there's some default settings that are hard-coded in there
Okay, so maybe that's the next step here to make the configurator configurable.
Yeah. It's the wizard itself would involve just having some way of taking those things and serializing. There's only one thing in the wizard that wasn't able to be configurable, and that's the ability to run some custom code when having to default a value. And there was one instance when I had to do that, and that was with trying to convert that solution. Like if you enter in a solution file, and I try to convert it into the solution name, well, I need to remove your .soln extension.
Yeah.
And there's no. I could spend some time to come up with some sort of string that you pass it, that you say, all right, remove this, and it'll do that. But I never. I was like, I ran out of time for that. But yeah. But all the other default values you can configure in a string. You just say grab the wizard page 1 or page 2 value and store and use that here instead.
Yeah.
It's a string replace.
I'm sure something wizardy like that could be needed in many of the different tools out there. And to continue on that and sidetrack a bit, I think it's actually quite awesome to see now that not only has the XrmToolBox got developers developing their tools, now there's a spin-off side to that where controls to be used by many tools are developed as separate packages. Jim Novak is leading that initiative. I just think it's really great, and I hope to see that when developers are updating their tools over time, that they will, let's remove this custom drop-down list I have with entities and instead use this one more or less out of the box from this common controls library. I worked with Jim at Boston at the Boston 365 event to try to get those to a point where we can pull them into our projects a little bit easier using a NuGet only source only NuGet package. So I'm not sure if he's released that. Do you know if he's released that source only NuGet? I don't think it's released that version of it, but it's close. And he's also working with together with Tanguy to make sure that these controls are sort of approved by Tanguy himself, and then they could be included in the XrmToolBox package as it's delivered, and then you wouldn't have to worry anyway about IL merging these controls. But then could be version issues and so on. But I think it's an exciting development here.
It is. It's really cool to see that sort of the tools that are building the tools sort of thing.
Yeah, spin-offs of spin-offs.
Yep. It's a tangled web that we weave.
Yes. So, Daryl, anything else you'd like to say regarding the Visual Studio Solution Accelerator or anything else?
Go out and try it. Help me do documentation of send me, hey, I have no idea what to do here, or hey, this confused me. That's always great. And I'll see what I can do to add that, and continue being a part of the community. That's always a beneficial thing to be able to have everyone working together on something. It's just even across continents and across the languages and everything else. This is really an awesome day and age in which we live that we get to experience and be a part of that.
Absolutely. And I have a small bet to make. I'm guessing that within 1 month, at least 100% of the developers at your new company will use this tool.
Well, yes, because I'm the only one. So within the first day. Right. First day.
Wow.
Day one. 100% of the developers are going to do that. Yeah, but before I left my previous employer, I started writing it before my previous employer, even before I left, because that was a major issue that we had. We had all these people that different levels of experience trying to create these projects, and we just didn't have a really good way of saying, here, go through and do these things without having to go, read a 10-page document. No one got time for that. So yeah,
especially when you got through really competent developers on your team and they want to explore things themselves instead of just reading stuff and using someone else's things.
Yep. So.
Okay, so thank you very much for being the guest today, Daryl.
Thanks for being the interviewer.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were. Yeah.
So to wrap up, I'd just like to say that if you have any comments, ideas, or thoughts around this, you are welcome to contact us on Twitter at XrmToolCast or on email cast@XrmToolBox.com. So welcome back to the next episode. Bye.
Happy coding. Bye.
This has been the XRM Toolcast from CRM Audio with Jonas Rapp and Daryl Labar. Do you have questions for Jonas and Daryl or suggestions for future episodes? Send it to cast@XrmToolBox.com. This is a production of Dynamics Podcast LLC.